Gordon, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on.
So what do you think about this weather compared to Scotland? I mean, it's not bad. We've brought you over here with good weather.
It's nice. It's basically as advertised by yourself. You told me that I was going to enjoy some nice weather. It's been very pleasant.
No doubt. Certainly. Now, have you had a chance to enjoy some of the southern food? Any big stops?
I have, yeah. We stopped at lunch the last 2 days. I think a place called Saucy Q's. We had some good barbecue there the past 2 days.
Got it. So what's the big take-home message? You're sitting there watching the Senior Bowl and all these guys going through that transition from the college game to the NFL. What's your big takeaway so far?
Well, I think on the Alabama side, the big takeaway so far is that O.J. Howard came in exactly as advertised. You know, we were told he was going to look like the prototypical tight end, and he rocked up to the weigh-in, and you know he's built like a Greek god. Frankly, he's the 6'5" player that we were told he was, and looks on the field. I think on day one yesterday was the most impressive athlete I saw from either team. Just had a couple of really nice plays. Had one drop, but rebounded with a couple of really nice catches, including one that was in double coverage that drew the ire of Greg Williams, the Browns defensive coordinator, who got pretty upset at his defensive players for giving up the big catch. But he's definitely been the primary standout, I think, on the Alabama side.
When you look at O.J. Howard, is he one of those players that when you look at his NFL career and what he's going to do at that next level, will Alabama fans be pounding their head into a desk saying, why didn't they throw the football more to O.J. Howard?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you look at O.J. Howard's career at Alabama, and he was a tremendous blocker there. But it certainly felt specifically this year that with the way the offense at Alabama was geared towards having an inexperienced quarterback, there weren't quite the same opportunities there for Howard to get the ball. And I think at the next level in the NFL, he's going to have a chance to do a lot more as a receiver, certainly from what we've seen this week.
Gordon, a couple of days ago, you put together an article, and it was talking about the possibility of Alabama breaking a record for the first-round guys. Let me talk about that for a couple of minutes. I mean, are you believing that this can develop? I mean, can this really come true?
I think there's definitely a possibility. I mean, there's two or three guys at the top, obviously Jonathan Allen, O.J. Howard, Tim Williams, guys like that who I think the expectation is they'll go very high in the draft. And then you go a little bit further down, and the record was 6. I think comfortably there's at least 4 guys, and then guys like Marlon Humphrey at cornerback, Cam Robinson at tackle, I think will probably go in the first round because it's a pretty weak tackle class. So even if you look at the fact that he might not be as consistent as you like, I think a team's going to fall in love with his traits enough to draft him in the first round. So the guy who would come in as the guy who had the chance to break the record is potentially Ryan Anderson. I think when you look at what he's able to do, he might be a guy that teams don't view as a first-round draft pick because we've seen him play both a little bit of edge work down here and also some off-the-ball linebacker. If teams view him as an off-the-ball linebacker, I think he drifts out of the first round. But certainly as an edge defender, what he can do as a pass rusher and against the run, a team picking late in the first round, like maybe the Green Bay Packers, someone like that, would make a ton of sense for them to draft him. And then all of a sudden, I think he's the guy who could push that to 7 guys that go in the first round.
What do you get when you draft a player like Jonathan Allen?
I think you're getting just an incredibly disruptive force, a guy who can take over games. We've seen him dominate time and time again. We all saw the play against Texas A&M where he beat the guard with a spin move, jumped over another player straight into the quarterback. He's just a guy who can be such a disruptive player from the defensive interior, and also has the versatility that you can play him on the edge as well. So in certain situations, you can play him out at 4-3 defensive end and then bring him inside as well and passing down. So that versatility, coupled with just how dominant he can be as a pass rusher and as a disruptor, just makes him a very likely candidate to go in the top 5 picks in the draft.
Now, you're our SEC guy. We depend on you for analytics. He's our expert that we depend on. Gordon McGuinness right now from ProFootballFocus.com here as we move forward. I want to ask you, when you look at the SEC, and you get all this talent together with other conferences, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the ACC, is there still a gap with talent? Because SEC was up here and then the other conferences were down here. Have they closed the gap when we talk about talent level from other conferences?
I think the talent level definitely has closed a little bit, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. I think we've seen over the last couple of seasons that things have been improving on the offensive side of the ball for teams throughout the rest of the nation. Particularly if you look out west, I think that's where the best quarterbacks in the nation are. But even here at the Senior Bowl, there are still some offensive players who've impressed. A guy like Fred Ross from Mississippi State has had a pretty nice day today, had a couple of nice grabs. So I still think the talent level is there from the SEC, that it is arguably the strongest here, but I think the gap has closed a little bit in the last couple of years.
When you look at Shawn Watson, I know there's been a lot that have been said about it today. Dabo said it would be like passing up Michael Jordan from the NBA several years ago. I'm just curious, if you look at Shawn Watson, do you see him as an elite franchise-type quarterback at the next level?
I think he's the kind of guy who you draft in the top 5 if you need a quarterback because of the throws he can make. But I don't think it's necessarily as, I think Dabo's going out there and talking up his guys like a head coach always does. But he still has the flaws. There are still some times that he isn't making the right read. He doesn't make the right throw that you want him to make. And he has started the past 2 seasons in college a little bit slow and a little bit inconsistent and built on it as the years gone on. So he isn't quite the can't-miss prospect that I think some of the defensive players are in this class. But when you look at him as a quarterback, I think he's the best guy in this class. And I think that'll lead a team to draft him probably pretty high.
When you look at the zone read right now in college football, and you look at a lot of these systems are now based on that zone read, the quarterback option. Let me ask you, how does that transition? Does that hurt the way that NFL scouts, and maybe they miss on a few of these guys because they may have had success at the college level, but that doesn't really transfer to the NFL as well?
Yeah, I think it can definitely have an impact. We've seen in the last couple of years, some of the NFL teams have employed more college systems. We've seen a little bit more read option in the NFL, some run pass option with screens built into wide receivers. But the fact that it's still not quite a true transition can certainly lead to players who are from a system that relies heavily on that zone read to be missed a little bit when it comes to the evaluation process. So, yeah, I think it definitely has some kind of impact.
Gordon, I want to go back because I know we talked about it about a week or so ago. We were doing some studies on Jalen Hurts and looking at some of his percentages. If I've done the math correctly, I think he hit 20 out of 59 deep balls. In other words, he couldn't throw down the field. 20-plus yards down the field. He really struggled. Now I think we're understanding that Dabo was one of the very few teams that spotted a lot of his weaknesses, and really, you go back and look at that game plan, they had a great game plan to stop Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and we talked about it time and time again throughout the year. Jalen Hurts as a passer, especially the fact that he's so young, is still so inexperienced and still making a lot of mistakes when you can put pressure on him. And I think a lot of teams in the SEC didn't get enough pressure on him, be that through struggling to get past the Alabama offensive line or just through not being smart enough to realize that they had to go after and they had to attack him. The game against Clemson, they definitely were able to put him under pressure. You saw him start to get flustered and evade clean pockets himself, and it just led to more accuracy problems. So I think working on his ability to react to pressure and also his ability to throw the ball downfield is key to his development this coming spring. How
much guts do you think it would take for Nick Saban to at least allow another quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa to be able to compete with him and possibly earn some playing time? How much guts would it take for Nick Saban to set a quarterback on the bench that just won 14 football games for you?
Well, I think if there's any coach that has guts to do it, it probably is Nick Saban. He's the guy who went to Jalen Hurts as a true freshman from effectively as a starter from the second game last year. So he obviously isn't too worried about making a bold decision at quarterback. So if anyone has the guts to do it, I think it definitely would be him.
Gordon, tell me some things that you guys are working on there in the Senior Bowl and talk about your evaluation. I'm really loving, you guys have got a lot of teams there as far as part of your team there at ProFootballFocus.com. You guys are really covering this event wall to wall there in Mobile.
Yeah, we've got a team of about 16 guys down here. So we are actually one of the main data partners, the main data sponsors for the Senior Bowl. So we've actually got a team of about 12 guys in one of the hotel rooms here at the Renaissance, grading every practice. So grading the 1-on-1s, grading the 7-on-7s, things like that. And over the next, I think over the next couple of days, but certainly within the next week, we'll be able to release that stuff. So that either from ourselves or the Senior Bowl, there'll be some stats and stuff coming out about how guys performed in the 1-on-1s. And then we've also got a team of 5 guys, including myself, who are here down on the field in the stands, just trying to capture some videos and some observations of our own in real time, just so that we can be updating people on what we see and, trying to focus on the main players that are here.
It's really amazing when you look at this activity with the Senior Bowl. I mean, this is truly a chance to go up against the best in college football. And this week, there's a lot of money to be earned there in Mobile. A lot of players can improve their draft stock.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at, I had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, and the guys who pass and come to the Senior Bowl pass because they know they're probably going to be drafted in the first round, and if they're not going to be drafted in the first round, they'll go in the second round. The guys who are here are guys who are borderline first round draft picks, generally speaking, guys who can improve their draft stock and push themselves right up there, and also guys who are day 2 and day 3 guys that can get to spend a lot of time with 2 coaching staffs and really impress them, but also just get themselves on TV, making some plays against some of the best players in the nation. And if you can impress this week, both in interviews with teams and also on the field against some of the top players in the nation, that's the kind of thing that sees players rise up the draft board. And it's around about this time of year that we start to hear about players rising up the draft board.
Yeah, it's pretty unique article when we talk about the chance, and I know we've already talked about as far as Alabama, chance to break the record. Give me some other guys that maybe outside of Alabama that really caught your attention there in Mobile.
One guy who really stood out also at the tight end position is Michael Roberts from Toledo. He's a guy who graded very well for us, had 16 touchdowns as a receiver last year. But this was really his first chance to get in front of a tougher opposition. And he's looked incredibly smooth as an athlete. I think probably up there with O.J. Howard in terms of the most impressive athletes we've seen at the tight end position. Just a huge frame, looks really smooth, running away from linebackers and safeties and coverage. And then his Toledo teammate, running back Kareem Hunt, had a fantastic day today, made 3 or 4 really nice cuts, showed some nice bursts. So I think he's going to start to elevate himself into the conversation to be, potentially that 3rd or 4th running back off the board. And then finally, the guy from Eastern Washington, wide receiver Cooper Kupp, he just had a tremendous day today. He's a guy who has done very well. We don't have a huge amount of work on him because he plays an FCS school. But in his 3 games against FBS schools over the last couple of years, has just put out some tremendous stats and just, I think averaged something like 4.68 yards per run against Washington State last year, which would be, over the course of a season, one of the top numbers, and had a great day today catching slants in front of players like Jordan Lewis, cornerback from Michigan. So he's a guy who I think really elevated his draft stock and really started to impress a lot more people.
Gordon, as you look around the talent of the SEC, when you start looking at the talent that's remaining, now we know the juniors that have departed early from different schools. Is there one school out there that can compete with Alabama in the SEC West?
I'm going to be really interested to see how things go at Auburn, because the addition of Jared Stidham at quarterback for them can really elevate their offense, I think. I think the one thing they were lacking in terms of being able to try and push Alabama a little bit last year was the passing game was lacking there. We know they have a good running game, but very often a good running game is not going to work against Alabama. You have to have that quarterback who can throw the ball downfield and make some big plays. Stidham, when we look back at his time at Baylor in 2014, because he didn't play, 2015, because he didn't play last year, in a very limited work, he only played about 350 snaps. Throwing the ball downfield, those deep passes are where he really excelled. So if they can get that out of him over the course of a season with that running game, they start to become a team who can cause a bit more trouble.
Let me ask you about Dalvin Thomas, and my final question here. Defensive lineman there at the Senior Bowl. What have you seen from Dalvin Thomas?
Yeah, he's looked good. He, over the course of the season for us, really stood out against the run, and he's done the same here. He's He's a very imposing figure. I stood next to him on the field yesterday, had a brief conversation with him. And despite the fact that he's very happy-go-lucky and always has a smile on his face, it's hard not to be intimidated by a guy that size. And when you see him, we've seen him leaning up against double teams, doing a fairly good job here. I think he's a guy who's going to surprise some people at the next level, because I think the perception on Tomlinson is that he was the guy who played next to Jonathan Allen. And while I don't think he's the disruptor that Jonathan Allen is, he's still a very good defensive tackle in his own right. And I think he'll have a very good NFL career.